Welcome back. Today we dive deep into the hidden empire of the Reimanns, a fortune few truly understand. The Reimann story begins in 1823, when chemistry was really starting to stir things up. Johann Adam Benckiser started a small chemical business in Pforzheim. He really knew how to mix things up. He made industrial chemicals for other businesses. Talk about having a real solution for every problem. In 1828, chemist Ludwig Reimann joined the company. You could say he bonded instantly. He was a talented scientist. His ideas always seemed to react well. And he was a hard worker, never afraid to get his hands dirty in the name of progress. When Benckiser died, Reimann took over the business, proving he was the right element for the job. Reimann married his former boss's daughter. Now, that's what you call a strong family compound. The company was renamed for both families, a true merger of elements. The Reimann family would guide its future for generations, passing the formula for success down the line. They focused on useful chemicals, citric acid for food, adding a little zest to life. Water softeners for homes, because even their business liked things a bit less hard. Under Ludwig and his descendants, the company began to grow, expanding faster than a runaway reaction. Good at chemistry, they always had the right formula. Good at business, they knew how to balance the equation. They developed new products popular with customers, always keeping their base excited. One of the most successful was a water softener called Calgon, a product that really cleaned up. Calgon became a household name in Germany, proof their ideas had real staying power. It helped the company make a lot of money, turning chemistry into cash. Profits were reinvested, buying equipment, expanding factories, and building a company with real staying power. You could say their growth was elemental. In the 1930s, Germany changed forever. The winds of change were more than just a passing trend. Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party seized power, cornering the market on fear and control. Their ideology was built on hate, nationalism, racism, a promise to make Germany strong, but Many business leaders saw an opportunity, and some were quick to invest in the new regime. Albert Reimann Sr., Albert Reimann Jr., they bought into the new order, enthusiastically, and with more than just capital. As early as 1931, father and son made deposits to the SS, an investment in power, not ethics. The SS was the brutal paramilitary force of Nazi terror. Their contributions were more than a footnote. They signaled clear political beliefs, and their support went beyond the bottom line. Albert Reimann Jr. ran operations. He was a convinced Nazi, fully subscribing to the regime's toxic business model of hate. He wrote to local Nazi officials, even filing complaints about how prisoners of war at his factory were managed, a chilling kind of human resources. Germany prepared for war. Chemical companies like theirs became key suppliers, winning government contracts in a deadly new marketplace. By aligning with the Nazis, their business would not just survive, it would profit and expand, even as others were forced out. They chose profit and ideology over morality, signing away their conscience, with devastating consequences. Albert Reimann Jr. steered the family company through the Nazi era. He certainly knew how to take the lead in business, for better or worse. He was more than a businessman seeking profit. You could say he was fully invested in the Nazi cause. His letters and actions showed deep commitment to Hitler's ideology, anti-Semitic and racist views reinforced by propaganda and law. In management terms, he was all in, but on the wrong side of history. As the man in charge, he made sure his company served the needs of the Nazi war machine. He ran a tight ship, but with a dark purpose. The plant produced items important for the military, guaranteeing contracts and growth. Business was, unfortunately, booming. This relationship was mutually beneficial. Supplies for the regime, lucrative stability for the company. It was a win-win, except for those who paid the real price. Junior sought to integrate his business with the Third Reich and ensured his own prosperity. He was always looking to seal the deal, no matter the cost. His beliefs shaped factory conditions. He was harsh, especially toward foreign forced laborers, complaining treatment and output were not severe or high enough. In his eyes, productivity was always bottom line. He saw these workers not as human beings, but as tools, an attitude central to the Nazi system and fully embraced in his management. To him, people were just human resources to be exploited. After the war, he tried to hide his involvement, posing as a businessman following orders, but the evidence says otherwise. He tried to cover his tracks, but the paper trail was too long. It shows a passionate early supporter who used the system to his advantage. He knew how to work the system for profit. This alignment was a critical factor in the dramatic increase in family wealth during this period. The company's bottom line grew, but at a terrible moral cost. Conviction and commerce completely aligned with a criminal state. In this case, business as usual meant complicity in crime. During World War II, the Reimann company relied on forced labor. This was tragically common in Nazi Germany. Millions from occupied countries were taken and forced to work. At their chemical plant, hundreds of foreign laborers were exploited, civilians from France and Russia, and Soviet prisoners of war. They received no pay. They lived in overcrowded, unsanitary barracks near the factory. Food was scarce. Many were sick and malnourished. The work was exhausting and dangerous. Many endured physical abuse. There are documented cases of guards beating workers. Albert Reimann Jr., who managed the factory, was fully aware and encouraged harsh treatment, believing it would increase output. He showed a complete disregard for their humanity. Forced labor brought enormous profits to the company. No wages, almost no labor costs. Profits from government contracts soared. Human suffering was converted directly into wealth for the Reimann family. While workers starved and endured violence, the family's fortune grew. Survivors remembered constant hunger and fear, and described Junior as cruel. For years, these stories were forgotten or ignored. The company moved on. The chapter of suffering was buried, but its profits remained, becoming part of the family's fortune. That suffering became a permanent part of the Reimann family's wealth. The wealth the Reimanns accumulated during the Nazi era wasn't just a side profit, it was the real capital of their company's success. By using unpaid forced labor, their expenses dropped dramatically. At the height of the war, about 1/3 of the workforce were captive laborers. For the Reimanns, it was a labor-saving strategy in the darkest sense. The money saved on wages flowed straight into profits and reserves. Truly, their bottom line was always in the black. Close ties to the Nazi government brought stability and guaranteed business. In those days, it paid to have friends in high places. While others struggled, the Reimanns had a steady stream of orders from the military and the state. Business was always booming. Their production included materials critical to the German war machine, shielding them from disruptions and keeping the factory fortune rolling in. Loyalty brought secure contracts and economic protection. For the Reimanns, it was a safe investment, morally bankrupt, but financially sound. This dark foundation gave them a major post-war advantage, proof that sometimes, fortune really does favor the bold, even when the cost is too high to count. While much of Germany lay in ruins and many businesses were bankrupt, the Reimanns had the capital to rebuild, invest, and expand. Their nest egg was anything but ordinary. Profits from suffering did not vanish, they became seed capital for a global powerhouse tying the modern fortune to its Nazi past. In business, as in history, the past is never truly written off. After World War II, Germany entered a new chapter, occupied by the Allies, with denazification on the agenda. For the Reimanns, it was time to keep things hush-hush. Albert Reimann Jr. was briefly detained, but managed to convince authorities he was more of a bystander than a supporter. Talk about knowing when to keep quiet. He concealed the full extent of his involvement, letting the truth slip through the cracks. Business as usual, secrets included. Cleared to run the company, he returned to the boardroom, where silence was golden and questions were off the table. Thus began a long era of closed doors and quiet corridors, a family secret kept under lock and key. For decades, the war years and forced labor were topics not even whispered about. Silence became the family's unofficial policy. Meanwhile, the business world moved on. The company's profits spoke volumes, expanding brands like Calgon while the past stayed on mute. The Reimanns kept things private, shielding their history from the public, and even from their own children. Some family albums are best left unopened. In the 80s and 90s, the company, now Jabi, reinvented itself under Peter Harf, shifting from chemicals to consumer goods. The secret ingredient? Discretion. Aggressive acquisitions in coffee, cosmetics, and luxury brewed up explosive wealth, while the family's biggest secret remained safely percolating in the background. The long silence was finally broken in the 2000s, when the family decided it was time to unbox some old secrets. The younger generation began leafing through dusty documents, hoping for family history, but sensing a much darker story was buried beneath the surface. In 2014, they hired an independent historian, Professor Paul Erker from the University of Munich, to help them dig even deeper. He set out to investigate the family and company's past in the Nazi era, determined to shed light on what had long been kept in the shadows. The results were, quite literally, headline news, and not the kind you'd want to frame. The truth was uncovered. Letters, donations to the SS, racist convictions, and chilling documentation of forced labor, all hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. The report confirmed the family were not just passive followers, but enthusiastic perpetrators, profiting from secrets that refused to stay buried. In 2019, the family went public. Peter Harf declared, Reimann Sr. and Reimann Jr. were guilty. They belonged in jail. The truth, once hidden, was now out in the open. They admitted the crimes and acknowledged their wealth's connection to this shadowy past. No more sweeping history under the rug. They pledged concrete action, 10 million euros to the Alfred Landecker Foundation, named after a Jewish man murdered by the Nazis, dedicated to fighting anti-Semitism and shining a light on democracy. The story of the Reimann family is a powerful lesson, proof that you can't always bank on wealth without checking its history. Great fortunes may look polished, but sometimes the real interest is in the past. Behind famous brands and billions, you might find some accounts that don't quite balance. Their rise was a business success, but a moral bankruptcy. Collaboration and exploitation weren't minor deductions, they were major investments in building immense wealth. We must audit where money comes from and reconcile with the past. When the younger generation sought the truth, a real reckoning began, proving that even the wealthiest can't write off their darkest chapters, but must account for them. They tried to invest their tainted wealth in good, fighting the very hate their ancestors once endorsed. It's a cautionary tale, and a small dividend of hope, acknowledging the past and dedicating resources to a future with real value. History matters. True wealth isn't just counted in coins, it's measured in honesty, justice, and humanity. Like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing stories.